Turned the keys of history and unlocked the beauty of Asia's past. In a place that is both far away and at the center of the universe. I am not the same person that I was when I entered the first gate, on a life-changing journey of warmth, affection, and hospitality not found in today's world.
So here we are at Akhara, where Pakistan's oldest wrestling gym. I like to call it sort of Pakistan's dojo, even though it's not martial arts. But wrestling is a huge ordeal in Pakistan. Here inside Musti Gate, a lot of these havelis, particularly this one, basically held all the munitions for the various Sikh commanders-in-chief and army chiefs of staff. So in this one in particular, the chief of staff lived here. Therefore, wherever he lives, you must keep all of the munitions here. So this actually had more weapons, munitions, gunpowder, things like that stored in this Haveli than anywhere in all of Lahore during the day.
I'd like to call Kirsten Seymour here on the stage to share a few words.
It's a real honor to be a part of Indus News, to be in Pakistan. I've been coming here for almost 20 years, and I've watched it change and grow. I think Indus News is the lens that captures not just the stories, but it's aiming to tell the truth. In a world where news is highly politicized, Indus brings a fresh face. It's going to take the stories of Pakistan and the real people and bring them to the living room of the world.
Let me quickly come to you, Kirsten. Let's talk a little about the turn of events and how now we're hearing that from the Foreign Minister of India during the Foreign Ministers meeting in China, between China and Russia. So there seems to be a bit of a change after those jets went down. What do you make of this?
Yeah, here on the ground, as a Westerner and a foreigner, it's alarming given that both of these countries have nuclear capacity. And Prime Minister Imran Khan referred to that today, sort of alluding to small events or presuming that these are small events, although these are not actually small events whatsoever. I would say actually the multipolarity and the geostrategy of Pakistan and India is really important because you have all kinds of external players involved. You know, Pakistan has been called a client state for the war in Afghanistan, which it certainly has been. And now we're looking at what the international community doesn't understand is how important the eastern border is for Pakistan. Pakistan has made it very clear that in Afghanistan, it will not help the United States or the NATO troops, exit from Afghanistan if they have to focus on the eastern border, i.e. being India. So that makes the United States have a very serious vested interest in this being a peaceful process. I mean, obviously it's not peaceful now, but it not escalating. I am here at Westminster Parliament on the Green, waiting for the debates that are going on right now in Parliament about the terminology Islamophobia.
I think at one point it was that the Taliban was the official government in Afghanistan with this internal group of Al-Qaeda, which was absolutely a terrorist organization led by Osama bin Laden. At this point, the psychology there is so unclear that a lot of people who are in the Taliban, just from propaganda schemes and also the media, they suddenly start saying, I'm Taliban, maybe I'm also Al-Qaeda, without even being recruited into the organization.
Kirsten, it's a fascinating story. There's a lot more to talk about. We'd love to have you back on. Thank you very much.
Kirsten, thank you very much for being with us. So we have conflicting reports right now as to who is in control exactly of Kunduz, but you have the Taliban showing no signs of wanting to leave, saying they have established their own government there. What would the capture and control of Kunduz by the Taliban mean? Are they back in power?
Well, I think they've had siege in Kunduz throughout the entire war. It's a strategic move that they would do this now, and I can tell you why that is. When they border Central Asia, that pass is where America got reconnaissance and the NATO troops got reconnaissance into Afghanistan. Without that, or that being corrupted, would be a very serious impediment for them. So that's something that they've known for a long time. It's also been exactly the same, tunnel that recruitment has come down into Afghanistan, into the tribal areas. So when you hear about the Central Asians, they're the big baddies, they're the tough guys that fight with the Taliban. That's how they get down through there. And they're also in fighting with ISIS and ISIL. I don't know what their direct route is from Uzbekistan, or the Triad states all connect there in the Fergana Valley, which is Tajikistan, Kyrgyzstan, and Uzbekistan. So, when you hear that there are foreign fighters in with the Taliban in Kunduz, it tells me that it might be a different type of Taliban. There are 45, 48 different factions of the Taliban. They're very divided.
Welcome to Evening Hour with Kirsten Seymour. Our guest tonight is Ahmed Mukhtar, Federal Defense Minister of Pakistan. Your Excellency, thank you so much for being with us tonight.
You're more than welcome.
How do you feel as far as justice, which is one of the big words that's used in the United States? What kind of justice do you feel Pakistan is getting in that you send someone home because one of their guys shoots your guys on the street in the light of day? So you say, we don't want these guys here, you're going to go home now. They go home and then they pull aid that's meant to aid your soldiers along the border of Afghanistan. So what's next? What's the next chess move after something like that?
I think the next step is that the government or the armed forces will remove the soldiers from the border areas.
I am silenced by entering this room, going over in my mind what this place represents. The people who are in this room are the men who the whole world is now fighting. They say they are fighting for Allah. Jihad is what they called it. When Osama bin Laden justified and claimed the attacks on the Twin Towers in America, which he did by the support of the men who filled up this room. Over 10 years later, of bloodshed of enormous proportion, still we are fighting these terrorists.
Now that you're living in another place called Swat and they say this is heaven, are you glad you didn't do any suicide bombing? Are you glad that you're still here?
The area concerned with the pipeline projects comes with rich history. Its being sought after has brought down some of the greatest empires. But instead of tearing down, can it build up? Pakistan has made it clear it will act in its own interests. But can the United States support Pakistan and set aside its fears of Iran? All of this is yet to be seen. Is there any possibility or plausibility to the idea that the U.S. may have done airstrikes to force the war into the laps of Pakistan?
Well, we have taken the measures.
Did you find that most of the boys that you brought in here to the school originally didn't have any kind of a trade or vocation or technical skill, and that's part of why they fell into the extremism groups?
But where did all this radicalization begin? Well, many allege it started right here. The famous Mullah Omar was a student here. He's the head of the Taliban during the Afghan Civil War, and good friends with Osama bin Laden. Today, we're going to take a tour of the madrasa, see where Mullah Omar lived, and we're also going to have a rare sit-down one-on-one interview with his former teacher, Maulana Sami al-Haq. I want to read something from the Quran to you. It says, "And fight God's cause against those who wage war against you, but do not commit aggression." So in the Quran, Allah has called for you not to commit aggression, even if somebody's fighting a war against you.
At what point is terrorism considered defense, and where do you draw the line between defense and aggression?
Kirsten, welcome to International Correspondence. Howard Kurtz of the Washington Post is just talking about the renewed interest, the renewed public debate in the war on terror. From your perspective as a filmmaker, is there a growing appetite for the sort of work you're doing?
Definitely there is. When I was first trying to get funding to do this film, I had a really hard time getting interest. George Clooney had just gone out to East Africa, and a lot of people were sort of moving their focus over to the situation there. And all of a sudden there's been this great huge shift back to the war on terror again.